Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special guest, CS Ratliff. CS, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, excellent, excellent. I always love when I actually found you on Twitter at first, so it was
Yeah.
nice to, yeah. Twitter's my watering hole, as I call it. So
Yeah.
I love just going and talking to people, seeing their books and and things. It's been cool to see you write different stories and think about different stories and kind of it's been nice to see you evolve in certain ways, and when you had the Kickstarter come out and we're talking about this book, I was like, oh, that's just really cool. So I'm really glad that we could get you on and help you out with this project, in any way we can. So that's super cool.
I appreciate it too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So we'll just go with that first question there. It is a fan favorite. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
It's been fairly brief. I mean, in the aspects of, I've watched a lot of your videos here, and I mean, you've had some people on like Scott Oden, and
Yeah,
they've been at it for longer than I've been alive,
yeah,
and
veterans. Yeah,
and you know, I've always kind of played around with storytelling, story building, world building, what have you, and um, but I didn't actually really start writing until about 3 years ago. Um, I kind of just sat down and wrote the first book in my lightning rod saga, and then it just kind of took off from there and never looked back. So um, I got the first two books in that one published now. That's that's gonna have four or five, I think, when it's all said and done. And then just had the Lucas Hale and Founder's Key come out, and that's gonna have seven that I know of so
Oh
far
wow.
in Lucas Hale's story anyway. Um, the amount of world building I've done for that, I have stories for prequels, sequels, spinoffs, all kinds of stuff. So it's been short, but I've built a lot and I've learned a lot,
Yeah,
changed a lot of my prose and everything. So I'm hoping that I can write for the rest of my life, I
yeah.
guess.
Well, I was just talking about you the other day to a couple of authors, where when I think prolific, in terms of Indian definition, I think of you personally, because you had a pretty successful, NaNoWriMo, right? I mean, you were like
Yeah,
really busted it out. I mean, you were one
yeah,
of like you and Mallory Kuhn were the two people I knew that were just like bam, bam, bam. I mean,
yeah. I
it was awesome.
I did I did Nano last year. Last year was the first year I did it, and
Oh wow.
I did I think 52,000 words last year, and that was for the third upcoming book in the Lightning Rod saga. And then I wasn't going to do it this year because when I did it last year, I got burned out on it, and
Yeah.
I spent about 4 months with writer's block, and
Yeah.
so I wasn't going to do it. And literally at the last second, I think it was October 28th, 29th, I said I'm gonna do it, and so I started writing a whole different series that's kind of sitting on the back burner right now. But yeah, I did 62,000 words in that one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's crazy. I was
so
looking, I was like, CS is over here doing that. I was like, I got to at least do, yeah, it's like the worst month for me with coaching and teaching. Like I just get done, I'm burnt out.
yeah,
But it was nice because I saw your, posts and things. I was just like, drug myself to the computer, So I do have to
yeah,
thank you for that because that helped me because I'm a competitive person. So
yeah,
it felt like we were doing sprints next to each other and you never knew it. But it
yeah.
helped me out because it just kept me, going in. Then December I had a really good month and was able to come up with some really good stuff. So it was really cool to see, I built a lot of things off of seeing your success and I looked at you and I was like, well, he can do it. I was like, I can do it. So it was very you and Mallory were very inspirational during that month. So it definitely helped to see your numbers and the journey and things like that. So that was awesome.
I'm honored to be your motivation, I guess.
Well,
Um,
I used to have this one guy I used to sprint with, and it was in one of those Discord groups. And when I got a new
yeah,
phone, I have no idea what group it is now, and he's probably
yeah,
like waiting on me, but it was fun, because we would do 15 minutes and then I'd beat him. And the
yeah.
particular group I was in was fun.
I run a Discord server. It's not very active, but during Nano it gets a little bit more active just for the sprints
Yeah.
alone, and
Yeah.
it is it's a lot more motivational. And I mean, even if you just go to the site random NaNoWriMo, um, you can link up with people in there, and
Yep.
if you don't even have to talk to them or whatever, you just every time you log in to push your numbers in,
Yep.
you see everybody else's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you see everybody else's writing faster.
Yeah.
It kind of pushes it a little bit harder.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just like it because I just feel like when I see, when I was sprinting with this one guy, Nate, it was just nice because, like you said, it would be like, oh, 15 minutes are done. And I beat him by 5. He beat me by
Yeah.
10. And he'd be like, let's go again, or
Yeah.
I would be like, let's go again. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's you just
it's hard when
keep.
you're by yourself all the time.
That's one of the first times I ever heard the term word vomit. It's just you put out all the words, don't worry about the edits, don't worry about what it's right or anything. Just put out the words.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's totally fair. That's entirely true. That's awesome. Well, for our audience, obviously I know, but because I've been following you for a while, but what genre or genres do you currently write in and how did you choose those?
I write fantasy, um, predominantly fantasy. I've dabbled in some sci-fi and stuff too, short stories and retellings, whatever. But as far as what I've published, it's fantasy. The Lightning Rod Saga is definitely high fantasy. It's set in a world called Narium. And then my newest book, which is this one, by the way, Lucas Hale and the Founder's Key. This one is set in modern times and on Earth, and that's crazy because I never would have thought I would write um, a story set in today's time
Yeah, yeah.
on Earth. You know, there's something so mundane about it, and yet you find a way to build this parallel world. You know, um, so I enjoy writing both types of fantasy, whether it's high fantasy, low fantasy, um, and that really kind of I think it stems from just being a lifelong fan of comic books, movies, pretty much from a young age. I got into Harry Potter and the Inheritance Cycle,
Mm,
Mr. Paolini, and that was what sparked my Nano from last year.
mhm.
Um, and so I pretty much just fell in love with anything that's high fantasy, Lord of the Rings, and that's kind of where my mind's kind of always been there, and I've always been fascinated with sci-fi and film, and it wasn't until I think this year I really started dabbling that a little bit. I did a retelling of Hercules set in the year like 2046 in the
Oh, that's
future,
cool.
and I messed around a little bit with the mythos and added them to a little bit more scientific, like um, some of the old kings and queens that kind of threw Hercules under the bus, and in this new story they were vampires. There was a lot of different twists of dark supernatural, and Hercules himself, he's kind of a lone ranger type. I mean, he had all kinds of tech, motorcycle and
That's
guns.
awesome.
Um, but I rewrote the whole first telling of where he hunted down the Nemean lion.
Oh, that's cool.
So I dabble in sci-fi just a little bit, but not much. Fantasy, I think, is that's pretty much where I'll always be comfortable. It's where I'll always enjoy. So I think fantasy is one of those genres that you can continue to go back to the same worlds, whether it's Wheel of Time, Game of Thrones, whatever. Just being in those worlds in your mind is just I don't know, it's relaxing. It's different.
Yeah.
So that's where I'll always be.
I definitely understand that. Like people keep teasing me. A couple of my author friends are like, when are you gonna get more sci-fi authors out there? I'm like, oh, sorry. And I have realized recently that just travel in, similar circles to you, it's like, you talk to certain people, I feel like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's just you're friends with those people and in the same groups and things. So I was like, I love sci-fi. I said that's how I got into fantasy was, sci-fi and fantasy, mix in with Star Wars, and some different things. But I was like, it's not on purpose. I said, just happens to be who's around me and who's contacting me and things like that.
yeah,
But yeah, I get it. I love sci-fi, but fantasy is just like my thing.
yeah,
It's a lot
yeah,
easier for me to write and it's a lot easier for me to
I
read
think
too. So
I think my perspective of what sci-fi is and what sci-fi means to me has changed over the years too, especially
that's fair.
as I've become a writer. I've always kind of enjoyed it in film, whether it's everything from, the Predator to
Mm.
Stormship Troopers, whatever. But I could never see myself writing one until I started looking at things a little bit differently. And being a fan of superheroes, a
Mm.
lot of the the superhero movies now, it's told in this larger than life scale, but when you really dial it down, it's still sci-fi.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Why a lot of them get their power. A lot of it's, up until I guess till after Thanos,
Yeah.
most of them it was all science-based stuff.
Yeah.
So looking at superheroes that way and what a hero can be, um, whether it's when you see powers as scientific base, whatever, and that sparked the idea for my own superhero story if I ever get around to writing it.
Oh, that's cool.
I made the book cover for that and the whole promo art and everything. I had the whole superhero story lined up,
Oh, that's cool.
and then the boys came out, and it was like they pretty much have my idea. So
Yeah, I definitely know that feeling. I had one where I was trying to figure out from DC how to get the title the old gods back because I had this one and I was like, oh, I had these older superheroes that took over things, kind of like Watchmen and the boys, and created this alternative future. And then I wanted these new superheroes come in called the new gods. And my buddy was like, yeah, it's like mostly just DC, right? I'm like, well, mine's different. He's like, yeah, but all the names are the same.
yeah,
He's like, I don't think they're gonna give it to you. So I'm like, it doesn't work. It like literally I have so much wrapped into it. I was like, it literally doesn't work if I can't use those two names.
yeah,
So yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I just interviewed a JCM Byrne, and he was talking about you know sci-fi and superhero genre, and I had not realized until our episode together where I was like, oh yeah, it really is sci-fi, and
yeah, yeah.
particularly Guardians of the Galaxy, or even Thor, and things like that. So yeah, it's very closely related. I never even realized it before.
Yeah, the story I had was that there was a meteorite that came down and gave everybody a bunch of powers, and I think that spawned from my love of Smallville growing up,
Oh yeah.
the whole Freak of the Week style that they had,
Yep. Yep.
and then I had the idea that the government would step in and basically take control over a bunch of them and be like, "No, you work for us. It's not the other way around."
Yeah.
So then you get all these superheroes, and I'd have to look now. I think his name was Fission, his superhero name, and he was pretty much the top, the most powerful guy, and he could control things on an atomic level, and
Mm.
he could break everything down.
Oh, that's
But I
cool.
but I had his whole power set. Um, from the naked eye, it just looked like he was creating fire. But through science
Mm.
fiction, I was thinking of all the elements you need to make fire. So instead of just saying fire and he's creating it, no, he's actually moving the atoms at a high pace level, creating
That's
friction,
cool.
moving oxygen particles through the air to create, the oxygen for the fire. So it was all science based. Well, and the whole story of the main character, and the main character's father was killed, and then the boys came out, and I said, that's pretty much what it was. All these heroes that are not actually heroes, and there's these new heroes that are stepping in to try to actually be heroic, and so I kind of shelved that idea.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is I feel like recently, there have been things like that where, people have waited a few years, after the craze, but people
Yeah.
still had, those,
Oh yeah.
those trends come back, I mean, look at bell bottoms and
Yeah.
everything else, so
The
yeah, it's nice that
vampire
you
trend.
can shelve. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I feel like you could shelve it, right? And then,
Yeah.
come back. And I feel like a lot of people too, with Dark Tower still are still looking for that type of
Oh yeah.
Odysseus like, episodic, series. And, some things have tried to do that, I think, but haven't quite gotten there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I know some people that were thinking about doing those kinds of things. So
Yeah. That was kind of the big inspiration behind Lucas Hale was granted, the fandom of Harry Potter is not dying anytime soon, but
Yeah,
um, with her not putting out books now for what, a decade,
yeah, yeah,
um, I looked for things like that, like Harry Potter for a long
yeah,
time, and I jumped back and forth from Vampire Academy, Percy Jackson, and all these recommendations people gave me, and I read a bunch of them, and I'm like, it's not the same. So I wanted to make something that was nostalgic to me, and for other Harry Potter readers, it would feel nostalgic and yet be something completely new. And luckily, from the reviews I've gotten from ARCs and stuff like that, that is the one thing, the one goal I had that I nailed. Um, Most of the reviews so far, they talk about how there's something eerily familiar about
mm,
Lucas Hale. Um, there's a sense of nostalgia. Plus, I got a whole slew of Easter eggs and nods in there, and then but the whole world itself is different, and the story is different. The characters are all different, everything. Yeah, so I'm hoping that it breathes a fresh life into, I don't even know what you would call the genre, academic fantasy, whatever. But um, that's something I wanted to kind of usher in a new era of academy magic and all
yeah.
that. So that was the whole idea behind that.
I mean, I think that's a great, I mean, I think you have a lot to stand on in terms of that type of genre, or subgenre with,
Mm,
the magical academia, yeah, whatever you want to call it. Um, it's almost weird that can't think of that subgenre, as being a subgenre, but it totally is, and but yeah, I think you have a lot to stand on there. But from your videos on TikTok, things you said on Facebook and Twitter, it just really seems like you have quite a lot there to stand up on, for your
yeah,
book on its own, and the
yeah,
series on its own, which I think personally is the medium that most people try to shoot for,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they do one but not the other. So
yeah,
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 that's really awesome to hear.
yeah. It was there was a lot of there was a lot of planning into character, which I had never done before. My first series, the characters kind of just came to life on the page. Like I had a name, maybe what their power was or their rank, whatever, and that's just kind of where it was. And then they kind of developed themselves. And this one, I specifically knew that I wanted different personalities, different personalities, some with disabilities, um, their ethnicities, everything. I wanted everything to be set in stone and then grow from there, which I didn't do that with my first series.
Mm,
Like my characters grow a little bit, but you don't really get to see that grow and feel that growth as you do, I think, with the new Lucas Hale. Because like I've already started writing the second book. I'm
yeah,
about 5 chapters into the second book now, and you really get to see the characters grow and a lot more that way. I think knowing the foundation of where they were. So I'm hoping that that happy medium, kind of getting a foot in the door with a bunch of Potterheads and fans of that era, because a lot of the ones I know, are my age.
yeah, yeah,
A lot of the Harry Potter fans are 25, 30 and up now. So if I can bring something new to that and yet um, still be for readers, younger readers, and I think that was the other half of my goal was getting new readers into fantasy
yeah,
because I don't know if it's just me, but there's a big push for just dark and gritty and adult like tones and everything like that. And
yeah, yeah,
I mean, there's still middle grade fiction and fantasy, but um, it's like black and white now. There's no area in between there, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And like my book is set for about 13 to 14-year-olds, um, and a lot of the things that are in it, are they're more oriented towards 2022 versus Harry Potter was originally what 1992, 30
yeah,
years.
yeah,
So we'll see, I guess.
yeah. Well, I do think you make a good point though, where, you know, I just think of so many times where, I have parents that are like, oh, I need something for my kid to read. They read Harry Potter. Now I'm trying to push them, and, a lot of the parents at my school, they know I'm just a huge advocate for, for reading. And they'll come up to me all the time and they're like, what should my kid be reading? What should they be
Yeah,
reading? Like, and I'm like, well, I'm like, I'm like, I know all these people. So, so it's nice to be
yeah,
able to, have your book to be like, oh yeah, like check this out, particularly if they like, and my kids come up to me in particular. It's not really the parents, but it's more the kids that are like, what should we be reading? They're like,
yeah,
you got the know. So it's really cool, for me to have your book, where I'm like, oh, cool. I have a particular set of shelves in my classroom where it's like you have to read the books in the classroom,
yeah, yeah.
because I just don't want them to, be gone and stuff. So my friend was like, just grab another copy of his book. I'm like, that's fair. So I was
Yeah,
like, I have been doing that too with certain authors I really like. I was, and I want the kids to read. So I'm really excited for that. Um, yeah, but it's cool, to be able to, for me as a teacher to be like, who, grew up on Harry Potter and stuff, to be like, yeah, there's, this thing that's really similar, but is also really different. And, I think that that's really exciting. It's just really exciting to see that you're doing something like that,
yeah,
and yeah, it's just, and, I feel like, which we'll get into here in a second, but I feel like, you have some unique ideas there too that, I think will really distance yourself as well. It's not
yeah,
being a Potterhead, but being a Hale head. I don't know if that's what
yeah,
you want to call it, but I can see the t-shirts now. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's really cool. Well, I just want the just to ask you this one, just so that people do know about your other books. So I actually have all of them. I've been going through the first one myself, on and off with my Kindle. It's been hard because I've been writing, but
Yeah.
I feel like I've gotten no reading done lately, but a lot of writing. But what is your Lightning Rod saga about, and how did you come up with that first idea?
Well, the idea of it sparked one night playing World of Warcraft,
Hmm.
and I've always been an elemental shaman. I've
Oh,
always
cool.
loved I've always loved lightning. Um, it's my favorite thing of nature
Oh, yeah.
ever. Um, and there's never going to be enough people that have lightning power. So
Amen.
so I thought if I could write something that was about a character who had lightning power, and then where would his story be? And I thought it can't be on Earth. So
Yeah.
and I immediately thought of inheritance cycle, Lord of the Rings scale of a world that I wanted to eventually, build out into. And I've definitely done that by going into the fourth book now. Um, but the story is Rainier Trisval. He's 16 and he's an orphan, of course. He is tracking down a creature. It's called a Vrail, and the Vrail kind of leads him to the mountains. It's called the Bjorn Mountains. And no, none of the locals go to the Bjorn Mountains. There's stories of monsters and death, and I think it's um, they're old stories. And Rainier just believes that they're old stories to keep kids away from the mountains and keep them from venturing out. You know, um, but he kind of says screw it one day, and he goes and tracks down this rail, and lo and behold, it's not a rail, it's a druid, and this druid shapeshifts and tries to attack him, and he gets saved by a mage, a fire mage, and this fire mage is the first evidence of magic for Rainier. So when he sees it, and he pretty much can't let it go. The fire mage saves him and tells him to run, and then he does, and he wakes up back home, and the next day, a different fire mage shows up looking for the first one. And he finds out that the first one died and that this new fire mage that showed up is his brother. So when he wants to go on a revenge plot, I guess, Rainier immediately sees an opportunity to see more magic and experience more of that. And he falls right headfirst into it. And upon the second attack, he's pretty much killed. Rainier is, but he's resurrected because he, as a human, He basically sacrificed himself for a mage. And the mages are all given their magic by the elemental gods. There are elemental gods and affinity gods. There's 7 different layers of their heaven. It's called Fornthus. So when he gets his when he dies as sacrifice, the oldest, which is the king of the gods, and he resurrects him, gives him a choice. He can be brought back to life. I can only do that if I give you magic. And of course, he's 16. He's let's do it. And he doesn't realize how much danger he's just put himself in, and all of the hardships that are about to come. And they do. They come rolling in quick. And I don't know why I went the route I went. I originally set out to write, about a 16-year-old, and the story immediately went, darker. It took on this real gritty tone. And there's a lot of death, a lot of fighting, a lot of battles. As we move into the second book and the third book, it opens up his eyes to the world, his power, and everything like that. Because um, unlike all the other elemental mages, there is no lightning elemental mage. There's nobody to teach him how to use his magic. So he's basically has to use what he can. A lot of stuff he's learning by accident. Then by the third book, he finds out that there are some ancient scrolls that they found that pertain a lot of his spells that he needs. So as the story progresses, he basically ventures out in the world, and the villains become harder than the people. They want his power. They want him gone. He's a threat to the gods, and it goes up and up and up. And every step of that series, every book of that series, just jumps up in everything, in world building, risk, the magic, the battles, everything. So it's pretty fun. It's a lot faster paced than Lucas Hale, but um, there's a lot of traveling dangers and stuff like that in the same vein as Tolkien or Aragon. So I don't know if I got
No,
that's
yeah.
the gist of the whole series. Um, and then I originally wrote them, and then they were different titles, different covers, and everything like that. And then I pulled them off Amazon because I became a better writer between books 2 and 3. And then I started rewriting them. I rewrote books 1 and 2, new covers, um, different titles. And like book 1 was released in December, and I had added like 16,000 words to it. And then book 2 came out, and I added like 21,000 words to that. So I've expanded on a lot of things, and just I've cleaned up a lot of my writing. Book 3, I have to release yet. I'm still rewriting that one now. Um, but I've already started writing book 4. Book 4 is estimated to be about 700 pages.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and then book 5 is that's the big finale, and I'm torn between splitting that in between 2 books because it's so massive. Um, that encapsulates everything, the whole series. The the main villains, I guess, at the end of it. Um, it takes everybody and everything to defeat. So everything just goes up and up and up.
Hmm. No, that's one reason why I asked the question. First of all, I really liked the magic system, in particular, and the world you built. So I just was curious too, from a writer standpoint, though. Have you noticed with like books 1 and 2 when you like rewrote and re-released them? The covers look great, by the way. I love what you did with them. Um, did you notice like a huge shift there, or in terms of readership or review?
Um, in reviews, definitely reviews.
Mm,
The only negatives I really had before was just the prose, really, I guess.
mm.
The prose and a lack of an editor. I kind of got screwed around a little bit there, but yeah, going back through and reworking the books, all of those negative reviews about the prose and everything is all gone. The
Oh,
same
perfect.
praises, the same praises that were there are there, again.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've gotten all the good with none of the bad. So
Oh, that's good.
it's definitely helped.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot in in writing. I've read a lot more and participated in the anthologies and beta reading and arcs. I really got to see how a lot of modern writers are writing now. Um, so a lot of that changed for me personally. So I went back through and I redid it, and I think from what I've seen so far, most people are happy. I've had some people that like the series enough that they got both books one and two again after
Oh, that's awesome.
remade them, and they reread them and put out new reviews for them.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
so yeah, I think for the most part there's definitely a positive behind it.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's just interesting because I've heard a couple of people say that, and um, there's been mixed feelings going into it. I guess I'm always just like, like some of those people, where there are things I've read where I'm like, yeah, there could have been something that could have been changed or whatever. And some of those characters I absolutely loved, and I'm like, I would, it's almost like you get to read this a really good book for the second time,
yeah,
and it's like
yeah,
you don't often get that chance, So
yeah,
to me, I'm like, oh, that would be I'm like, that'd be really cool.
yeah,
So yeah, I feel like that'd be, especially if you really like the characters, and the story and
yeah. I gotta.
yeah.
That was one of the big things was diving into character. When I first started writing, like when I wrote the first book, I wrote it in 4 months. There was no
Mm.
planning really behind it. I had the idea of somebody with lightning. They need to get here. There would be a necromancer that wanted his power. And I just wrote, and I wrote it in 4 months. And when I got done, I thought I had this amazing story, and I think the story is still good. It's still one of my favorites. But the writing wise, like I did a lot of telling, and just the you could tell I was a new writer. And so going back and fixing a lot of that, and moving from show not tell and all that, and really diving into the characters a lot more. I think that helped bring a lot of things forward. Like my secondary character in the whole series is Taran, and he's the fire mage, and he's pretty much universally the most favorite character,
Mm.
which is blows my mind because I haven't dove into his character a lot until like
Mm.
book four.
Oh, that's interesting.
But a lot of people they like his character, and um, so it's interesting to see which characters people like. If you kill off a character, you get to see if people care or not. Um, there was a there's a lot of characters that get killed off, but um, uh,
I
to
saw a
see
couple of your reviews.
yeah to see people get attached to characters,
Yeah.
it's nice.
Well, that's what I was like. Oh, when I first saw you, on Twitter and things, and I saw somebody with a review, and they were like, "I'm so angry at him," and I was like, "Oh, that's impressive," that you're this angry. I'm like, that means that's good writing, like you cared about the characters enough that when, that character's not there, you're PO'd at the author. Like that's one of my goals is to make somebody either love or hate me that much, and that means that you have
Yeah,
really good writing. So I think that's awesome.
it's like in the third book, there's a major death in the third book, and I really dove into that whole scene because he's really close to the main character. So I really prolonged the whole funeral scene and dove into Rainier's emotions stuff like that. Um, I had about a dozen readers telling me that they cried during that whole
Oh
thing.
wow.
And while you're like, you feel guilty about it, at the same time you're like, yes,
Yeah.
that, that means you've put something out that people care about as well. So
Yeah, totally. Well, that's super cool. I think that's the goal. Like my first fantasy novel, I'm taking a break. I just need a break from the story. It's too close to me. And, I think part of it's like I just get almost depressed because I'm just like, oh, like the things that I put these characters through. But I always tell people, I'm like, I promise you, if you can make it through all three books, like I love the Cobra Kai, the
Oh yeah.
the Hawk, the your Johnny's, the redemption arcs. I even
Yeah.
think Daniel's on a huge redemption arc personally. I think he,
Yeah.
really left the Miyagi way behind, and in some ways, still really has. And
Yeah.
I think he's getting a good, redemption arc. But redemption just really stuck with me, particularly after that season 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I promise people, I'm like, if you stick with me for the 3 books there, that by the end you're going to be like cheering,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily happy for everybody, but I do think, all that investment of emotion will come out, and, you might need therapy at the end a little bit to, or a group to talk about, or, like we
Yeah.
hate Dan or something like that to start, but I think it'll be cool. But yeah, that's just cool. I saw some of your reviews for book 3. I think it was book 3, and I was like, man, like to make people this upset is like
Yeah.
it's one of my goals.
Yeah.
Because I do, like you said, I do feel like it really shows their love for the character. So I think
Yeah.
that's just great writing there.
Well,
Well,
it's interesting because you said that talk about a redemption arc, and the character in particular that died in book 3, he was somebody that went through a big redemption arc. Um, he was universally hated, feared in the first book, and then by the third book, he's a hero. He's seen as a hero. He's forgiven and everything, and then he dies.
oh.
So
Well, if people are upset about that, I mean, that's awesome. I knew another author that literally said that he did that on purpose because nobody liked a character in his book 1, and then he did that in book 2. They loved that character, and then he killed them off at book 3, and it really dramatic. So I think that he's like, no, you're gonna love this character, and you're gonna like it too. So I think
yeah,
that again just speaks to the writing. So
yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, that leads us actually perfectly into now, with your newest book. So what is your Lucas Hale and the Founder's Key about, and what were the origins of this character in this story?
So Lucas Hale and the Founder's Key and the whole series. The series is called Alexander Academy of Magics, and Lucas Hale is about to turn 13, and he's been living with his grandpa for the last 2 years. His grandpa is really brutal. He is a ward, works for the Order of the Arcanum, and he trains Lucas very hard in confliction. Confliction is basically their witch and wizard's form of martial arts.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
and then he forced him to train alchemy because they can't do magic. They can't learn it until they turn 13. When they turn 13, the Order of the Arcanum reads their aura, and based upon their bloodline, will tell them which school they get put into. And Alexander is the most prestigious school. So Lucas knows he was raised by his aunt and uncle up until 2 years ago. They got killed in a car accident. He doesn't know much about his parents yet, but he knows that he's gonna be a wizard. He already knows his bloodline. His mom, dad were, his aunt and uncle were, and his grandfather is. So he's basically just awaiting for his 13th birthday to leave what he repeatedly calls this prison that he lives on in Wyoming. And he sees his grandpa as this warden. Um, so basically, he gets his letter for the school, and he gets accepted into the most prestigious school. And as he's going through school, he learns that people kind of really know the legends of his parents and the sacrifice that they made and everything like that to stop this dark wizard. And Lucas has read a little bit about it, but he doesn't know much about it. And every time he's asked anybody about it, they kind of push him off. They don't want to talk about it. So through other people, through books at the school and stuff like that, he starts trying to learn a little bit about his own past, his parents' past, and everything like that, and how that leads to Lord Malamus, who's the Dark Wizard. Um, and as the whole story starts to unroll, he pretty much immediately realizes that his, I guess, his fame or his parents' fame has only placed a target on his back. So he's immediately being sought after, and um, he's got to learn everything yet. But he has revenge on his mind. He's 13, and as soon as he gets to school, he pretty much learns that Malamus is the one that personally killed his parents, and he's locked in a prison in a different world. And it's this other world called Ismtor. So he has revenge on his mind. He's young. Gets a chance to learn magic, and that's his goal in the beginning. His goal is to become the best he can be, and then go after Malamus. And he learns real quickly that no matter what his plans are, life is gonna throw everything at him as he's going through school, and in between. So that's basically the first book.
Wow, you got a lot there that's like it really does seem very middle of the road. You got a lot to pull in the, the Potter crowd, but you got a lot there to make your own crowd. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad I backed the Kickstarter. Very glad. I was just talking to somebody about that book the other day, actually just 2 days ago. And I was like, yeah, oh, my buddy, we actually just saw him too. We were talking about it a couple of days ago. Yeah, I was back this Kickstarter, and him and I share books. So
Yeah.
we were just talking about it again today, actually. He's like, who you got in the lineup today? So I was talking to him earlier about a couple authors, and I was talking about you coming on. He's like, oh, that's the Harry Potter guy. I was like, I think that's a great sign,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but yeah, he was like, we were talking about your title. So I was showing him, the book and everything. Um, and he made a good point. He was like, even the title, really sounds like,
Mhm.
a Harry Potter-esque, title, things like that. I didn't think about it till later. I was like, it really does sound like very niche genre, for these magical academies and things like that. So yeah, it's
Yeah, that was a late decision too.
mm,
To look back at a lot of my earlier tweets,
yeah, yeah,
a lot of the earlier covers, the title on it before was "The House of Blood and Stone."
yeah,
That was the working title, and then I started trying to play around with the title and the cover a little bit as it got closer to being done, and I thought, if I put something out that says Lucas Hale and whatever, and then every book is Lucas Hale, like book two is going to be Lucas Hale and the Blood of Shadows. That is immediately going to tell people that it's the Lucas Hale story.
yep,
But for book one, it's going to immediately tell people that's in that same vein as, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's
yep,
Stone, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. So I mean, it definitely was done intentionally. So
yeah.
carefully intentionally because those fans of this could be, they could tear you apart if they want to.
Make or break you. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you tweeted that though, I was like, because I like the other title, like I really did.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and then when you tweeted that, I was like, oh, he changed it. And then I actually looked at the tweet and I was like, oh, that's so much better. Like, I was just like,
Yeah,
genius move.
it was back and forth on it and stuff. So I'm trying to get the hashtags going. Um, you know, hashtag Lucas Hale series, and
Oh, that's cool.
so we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like you got, feel like you're setting yourself up, for a lot of successes early on, and I just want to point that out to the audience, that, in terms of, because we always talk about writing to an audience, everybody talks about that, but I don't think people actually really dissect it because you've done a lot of things that, are very unique. We'll get to those here in just a second with some of the other questions and things, your magic system, things like that. But it's a, I don't know. I feel like you took a lot of things that, with your description and things that, are there that people really do enjoy. But again, just want to point out that I think it's that you're offering something completely new
Yeah,
and unique in that same type of format, like your title, like people are automatically going to be drawn to that title,
yeah,
based off of, like you said, like the genre. And I'm trying to think of within the last 4 or 5 years of, like, any magical academies that there were some before that, but,
yeah,
now it's like the Percy Jacksons have all really kind of,
yeah,
diverge from that. So I think that, there's a huge gap there, and, there's a good niche in the market there that, you could totally cover yourself. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was something I was going through a lot with. I have a beta reader. She's really good. She finds everything, and that was something I was in between a lot of the writing was that thin line of, are you getting too close to Harry Potter? And then there are other inspirations too. Percy Jackson and the Immortal Instruments are the
mm,
there's the big ones.
oof.
And and while they're like, you're getting a little too close there. And then anytime I got too close to something that was too familiar, I would take it and do a 180. I would flip it completely opposite way.
Oh,
So,
smart.
um, like for Lucas Hale, like I knew I didn't want Lucas Hale to be like Harry Potter. I wanted him to be everything that he was not. And I've apparently nailed that because I've had three of my ARC readers now tell me the that Lucas Hale is, what Harry Potter's not, what
Mm.
Harry Potter could have been or should have been, whatever. Um, Harry gets put into Gryffindor, it's the hero house and everything like that. Lucas does not. Lucas gets put into the villain house. So there's all these things that are
Mm.
flipped and they're different. And um, Harry's fame was from, he stopped Voldemort, whatever. Lucas's fame is like, um, your parents did something, so you're like a prince, basically. Uh, but there are these heavy rumors that his parents were the cause of Malamus, the bad guy.
Mm.
Oh, he's somewhat famous in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways he's infamous. So a
Mm.
lot of people are nasty towards him and hate him before they even really before they get to know him. They just meet him, and um, he's got to figure out this line to walk throughout the whole book. He's like, who doesn't like me and who likes me, and he doesn't even know why. He doesn't even know him. So there are a lot of things that are flipped, and there's just that thin line of walking between all these different inspirations behind it. Um, I think it worked out pretty well though, because it definitely drives the story and the characters in a different direction, I think. Um, like I've had a lot of people ask me if it's good for 10, 11 year olds like Harry Potter was. And I'm like, maybe not so much because it's more towards 13, 14 and more towards 14, 15. Um, it's darker than the first Harry Potter is. Um, so I definitely wanted to make it, my own thing, make it a little bit more realistic. The A lot of the, like the magic system and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just a little different. So
Yeah. I think that's so smart though that when finding, like you said, that something was too much like Harry Potter, because you do want to tell your own story. I think it is smart that you rearrange things like that. That to me just sounds interesting because I'm just thinking of so many times where Harry Potter got his butt kissed by so many people,
yeah,
because of that. And I'm like, I kind of feel like, you know, maybe, at times I would have thought him infamous rather
yeah,
than famous. So I think
yeah,
that, and that actually brings a whole new perspective to not just, Harry Potter, but, to your character. And that to me just that interests me more than a Harry Potter clone.
yeah,
Is like seeing what you've done to change the character.
yeah,
That sounds really interesting. Even when you were saying, like he's trained by, his grandfather. Like I'm like, well, that's cool because that's different than Harry Potter.
yeah,
I'm like, that's
yeah,
that's a decisive difference there. That is, makes your character unique. So
yeah, yeah. And that was a, a world building decision, I think. Like I've created my own. There's a sport in the story, in the school, in the world, I guess. So I've created a whole different sport. I'm like, there's Quidditch and Harry Potter, and Lucas Hale. There's war in both. So confliction is a big part of that, and that comes from a lot of my martial arts background and being a veteran and stuff like that. Like that is something I know, and I know how to teach it, I know how to train it, and therefore I know what kids are like learning it. Because these are 13-year-olds. I know what a 13-year-old is like trying to teach them martial arts. So um, and then of course learning it myself, I know you know what it's like to get things wrong, get things right, and all that. So I knew I really wanted to push a semblance of martial arts and defensiveness to this story that Harry Potter never had.
yeah, yeah,
So I have some nods and some Easter eggs to Harry Potter, and some of them are like little pokes at it. Like that one is, they kept saying, Hogwarts is the safest school ever. but every year it got
Yeah,
broke into.
yeah.
So like my school changes. I took a more realistic stance to it, military stance to it. When something is wrong, something's broke or weak, you fix it, you make it stronger. So my story, the things that happen that are bad in book one, they restructure in book two. The barriers, um, the rules for the Order of the Arcanum, they they're constantly trying to make things safe,
That makes
and
sense.
they never did that in Harry Potter, which I always thought was one of
It
those
did
things.
it did drive me crazy because I'm like, why don't you have your version of the National Guard here?
Right.
Like particularly when Voldemort's coming.
Yeah.
you
Yep.
know? Yeah, it was always one of those loopholes where I'm like, oh, am I the only one? Like, I think that's why I haven't read the later books because
Yeah.
I'm like, this doesn't make sense, and it
Like
keeps pulling me out.
they had they had ors and in Harry
Yeah.
Potter, but they're so far few in between, you know, like you had the Order of the Phoenix, whatever, and then there's a few of them in there. But in mine, the Order of the Arcanum, like they're law enforcement. They're called
Mm.
wards, and the wards there are thousands of them. They're like a military. They're a magical military, and that's not to spoil too much, but something coming up in like book 4 or 5, I really want to play with is a theory that I've always had or question I've always asked myself is how would a magical army go
Mm.
against a real army?
Oh,
Uh,
that would be so
real-
cool.
so
Yeah.
that's gonna be fun to really play with.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. Oh,
Like how well does the shield hold up against the 50 cal?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like a Browning, yeah.
Yeah.
You got me thinking about that now. Well, and
So
I like too where you're talking about, you know, I don't know. I just always thought that I did, as a martial artist, I thought that there was just so much that could have been done with even a defensive style of, offensive versus defensive style magic, and
yeah.
I just felt like the spells were cool, but I was like, there seems to be no real, you know what I mean? Like there's a move and a move. There's no
Yeah. And
style or,
that's kind of, I don't know if you can see very well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, those look great.
This is from the book. It's the Record. That's another poke was something I always thought was whatever you want to call it, I guess. Uh, they had wands that can get broken or with a simple spell knocked out of your hand.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they never did anything to fix that. I mean, it's
Yeah,
that
it
easy.
was just weird.
You're not teaching them magic without a wand. They can lose their wand or break it so easily. It's setting them up for failure.
Yeah.
Oh, and right in the beginning of this book, Lucas asks his grandfather if he's going to get a wand, and he says, "Why? So you can lose it, so you can break it." He said, "We don't use wands. They used to use wands in this story."
Oh, that's cool.
So
That's cool world building.
that's another one of those adaptations. People's wands go broken or getting lost or whatever, stolen, and so they came up with these, which are Precorbs, and each one is unique to each wizard, and only the strongest magic can break one off, which also allows for two hands to both use
Mm,
magic
that's
and
cool.
confliction of fighting. So that's just one of those that's one of the pokes, I guess. Um, but it's something I always want to do throughout the whole series is constantly adapt, and I think that comes from both martial arts and military.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
is it always adapting to the threat at hand.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that if it was the one hand or two, but now God, I'm just thinking of so many different things with not just martial arts, but world building with two, a lot of different things that you could have happen. It's just that just opens up a lot more world building, I feel like, and just a lot more fun.
yeah,
Just sounds more fun.
yeah, I
That's
think
yeah,
I, I originally had it as there was one on each wrist in case one would break.
that's
Um,
smart.
but then the way I've described it and designed them, the hides that are used are all from various dragon hides. And the dragon hides kind of bind with the orb. The orb is made
Mm,
of the blood and then 3 stones. So the orb is made first, and then it's bound together with a magical creature's hide. So they're pretty much indestructible. I
Mm,
mean, and there's not a spell that you can do to just take somebody else's off. So you're not gonna go into a fight, and Lucas will never go into a fight, I guess, with the threat of losing his wand, losing his way of doing magic, and that's kind of a double-edged sword because um, then you have to think of different ways to increase the
mm,
risk, and to me that's fine. I
yeah,
through
more
through
fun.
action through action and everything else like that, it really, I think it puts the character in a I think it makes them grow a lot more.
Yeah,
Instead of losing your wand, and your character can grow that way, I guess. If they was to lose it or break it, then they got to find a way to defend themselves
yeah,
or run. And in this one, if there's no chance of them losing it, then there's only growth for them to become stronger and better. Whether it's offense or defense.
mm,
So
yeah. It's a lot more interesting
yeah,
than just having a wand. There's already been a lot of that. So yeah, I think that is very smart on your part. That's awesome. It's very, very interesting to think about. So I'm really excited about that. I did notice your book. So I did want to ask you about this in terms of your writing advice. What sort of writing advice does your book Stand Your Ground, Write the Fight give the reader? It's a great title, by the way.
um, it basically teaches um, the the foundation of writing action scenes, and that's
Oh,
not
that's
just
cool.
and it's not just fighting. There it dabbles a little bit into moving from scene to scene, just action in general, not necessarily combat or something like that. But it breaks down the ways of using the senses, the sentence structure to set paces,
Mm,
uh, the design of choreography, choosing different martial arts, different weapons, and all that. It's 12 steps that break down how to write action a little bit better. And that came about because I did a panel for Right Hive like 3 years ago, and that was my workshop, was writing action scenes.
that's cool.
There was like 350 people on that Discord listening to me talk about writing action.
Oh,
And then I
that's
was like,
awesome.
there's really this many people, this many writers that
Mm,
struggle to write action. And then afterwards, I got on Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and I found out that yeah, um, a lot of writers, that's one of their biggest fears is writing any kind of action scene, whether it's somebody being chased or an actual fight, and especially an actual fight. Um, so it breaks down into 12 different steps of how to write them cleaner, how to set the pacing right, the importance of action, and so you're not just throwing action into your story just to have it. Teaches you how to separate what happens before, during, and after, the effects of action scenes and everything like that. So it just teaches writers how to do that a little bit better.
oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's a great title too. I was like, oh, that's I didn't know you had done that. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I have to ask him about that. So
Took me
that's
forever to come up with that
yeah,
title.
that's really cool. I just think it's a perfect title. So that's super cool. Definitely have to check that one out. I always like when I can find something like that because like you said there, you would think that everybody who's had problems with that would have written a book like that or put it together with somebody. So yeah, there's still feel like there's not as much out there as people think that there is. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
And it's always been like the opposite of what I thought too. I thought that people with martial arts experience and veterans and stuff like that, I thought they would be better at writing action. And generally, a lot of people that are comfortable writing action have never had training or anything like that. So
Yeah,
a lot different than I thought it would ever
yeah.
be.
Well, it's like I'm trying to politely ask certain beta readers with military experience in particular. I have this recon marine, so I'm like, ooh, like I really struggled. I was like, martial arts. other fighting scenes I can do all day long, but I'm like, I'm just not a big gun person. Like we've
Yeah.
hunted my whole life, but it's like hunting versus special
Yeah.
forces and weapons is totally different,
Yep.
and I'm like, I've never fired an M4. Like, I'm like, I had to do all this research, all these things, watch all these videos, and I still don't think and I want to hit the veteran crowd, in particular, and the Marine crowd to be like, oh, like, because I do want to touch on certain things, which I do find interesting and with the particular character. And I do think that military people have been portrayed negatively for a while now in certain areas. And I want people to I have a lot of family who've been in the military and friends, especially. And I would like to, and police, and not that, it's whatever, but I want people to still remember that a lot of people do those things to help. And as a
Yeah.
teacher, there's a lot of teachers where I'm like, you shouldn't be here, but I do think it's important to, to show that these people, particularly, police and soldiers, it's like not a lot of people do that, and are willing to risk their lives. And that's literally what you're doing, and it's like, I want to showcase certain things, but, at the same time, it's like doing military sci-fi, like, or hard sci-fi. It's like, if I don't know the science,
Yeah.
so a part of me is like, I do get it because I worried about writing these last two scenes for my prequel novella. I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, I'm like, am I going to get them right? But I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I'm not going to get them right because I haven't been there. I
Yeah.
haven't been to Baghdad, so I'm like, I'm going to have to write the draft and then, finish the first draft and then find somebody, to go back over it to help me with it. Like, that's just the reality. So I think it makes total sense that people, would really want help with that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever read The Gray Man? The movie just came out on Netflix.
no, actually, my buddy and I were just talking about adding that to book club, actually.
The movie, is one of the worst book to film adaptations I've ever seen.
Oh, that stinks.
A lot of people really like the movie
Yeah.
for what it is, um, which I don't understand because the author, Mark Greaney, he was part of the filming process.
Hmm.
And I think they just mashed up a bunch of the books from the series. But as far as a writer goes, the book goes, from a military standpoint, um, just the whole operations, the action in general is probably one of the best I've ever read.
Oh,
Just
that's really good to know.
one of the best and one of the most realistic. Like I'm a big fan of the Reacher series and stuff like that.
Oh, I just got into that. Yeah.
Reacher and the Born series.
Oh, yeah.
But I think Mark Greaney is hands down the best action and military operations
Oh,
writer
that's
there.
good to know.
He's a veteran, so
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
if
Yeah,
you
we
ever want,
we just talked about that yesterday, actually. Because somebody had just said that I didn't know that, like that I didn't know that that's what it was. I saw Netflix was just doing a thing, So I was really happy to hear that. But yeah, I didn't know that about him. So I'm gonna have to definitely check those out a lot sooner than I was going to. Reacher is another one where I'm like, got really into, the show. I loved it. And then I read The Killing
yeah,
Floor, and then I read oh my gosh, The Enemy.
yeah,
I absolutely loved, and which is weird because I feel like I normally like more action with those types of books.
yeah,
But I mean, Lee Childs writes in such an interesting way, and
yeah,
that narrative style, it's just, yeah,
yeah.
very, very good.
Yeah, he's got an interesting style for stories. His storytelling in general is
Yeah, yeah,
always found it interesting because he's one of the few writers who can fill up pages with dialogue with no dialogue tags, and who's writing.
yeah, yeah,
I always thought that was interesting with Lee Child.
yeah, yeah. It was very interesting. I was like, wow, this is opposite of what they tell you, right? But I guess, depends on who you are, So yeah, it was very interesting. Oh,
I'm
that's
not
really
sure
cool.
I'm not sure the narrator's voice, the narrator for the Gray Man, the narrator that did the audiobooks, he does all of them. He is phenomenal.
Oh, that's really good to know.
He nails like 21 different accents and everything like
Oh,
that.
wow.
He's really good.
That's impressive. That's super cool. Yeah, I definitely have to bump that up. I've definitely been looking for something like that. I was trying to get back into the Bourne series a while back because it's been so long because I read the first two, I think, when the movies first came out, and then, life happened and I bought them recently really cheap at like a yard sale or whatever. I actually got the first print of the first book, and it's so cool. It's got like the sunglasses and everything. Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely bump that up. That's awesome. So when it comes to your Kickstarter, what's one thing that you have learned and one thing that you will take away when it comes to this Kickstarter for your Lucas Hale series?
Well, I learned everything about a Kickstarter because I had
That's fair.
never done one before.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of got the idea from Brandon Sanderson. Um, I watched him, put out his Kickstarter, and then he broke the world record at like $1 million in the first 24 hours. And I thought, well, if he could do that under his name alone without even revealing what his books are about, because he did it for, he had these secret books,
Yeah.
and he didn't even tell what they were about. So I mean,
Yeah.
he did that on his name alone, and people were, yeah, take my money.
Yeah.
I thought, well, maybe I can get a couple $100 then, and
Smart.
I wanted those to be able to get this these stacks of books that I've never been able to get before that I can sign to send out to people. Um, and a lot of that, goes into the shipping and everything I get. Like, I mean, there was somebody from Ireland who messaged me on
Mm,
Kickstarter, and he's like, can you ship to Ireland? And I looked it up. I said, I can. That's like $40 for shipping.
it's hard. Yeah.
And he was like, well, what if I just give you the $40 and then plus the Kickstarter, and then you send it to me? I was, if you want to, you're paying like $71 for the book. And he said that's fine. He really wanted the book. So I'm really grateful for that. That somebody would, you know, want my book that much, whatever. Um, as far as future goes, I think I will probably do this with every one of them,
Mm,
with every release, if this book does well anyway, and I get the word out about it. As a writer standpoint goes, an indie author anyway, it makes it really nice to be able to get them, and to have those funds come in basically right whenever you need them, right when you set them, to specifically be for what you need it to be.
yeah.
Um, like I want to, like I have like these, I have these bracelets made. There were like 3 or 4 people that ordered those. If the series kicks up a little bit, I have the designs and stuff for all the different T-shirts for the 4 houses that of
Oh, cool.
Alexander. Um, Bookmarks, all kinds of merch and stuff like that. And so Kickstarter will definitely help pay
Mm,
for something like that.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think going forward, I'll probably use a Kickstarter on all of them.
I mean, I think that when I saw that you were doing that, I was like, oh, I think that's smart. Um, I saw a couple, you and two other authors I knew were both doing them for different reasons and offered different things. But, I was like, oh, that is not something I considered doing before, but I think it makes total sense, and I'm like, kind of like, I'm thinking to myself, like, why didn't I think of that? I'm like, why, people just now started thinking about doing that? It seems like Kickstarter is the perfect avenue to get your product, just like you were saying, and to get it to people, as quickly as possible and in a, a timely, professional manner. And, then I feel like too, with your algorithms too, that it's got to help somewhat, in terms of search engines and things like that with
Yeah. Oh
Kickstarter,
yeah.
so yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, I think you know, I think just in general, I think it's becoming more popular,
Oh yeah.
not just for authors, but like I had never when I saw Brandon Sanderson do it, I got on Kickstarter and I was like, let me check it out. I never even looked on there before. I never, backed
Mm.
anybody or anything. And so I started looking through it, and just the amount of things that people have
Oh
Kickstarters
yeah.
for, it's pretty brilliant. A lot of them, especially when you get to see the stories of them on there, the reasons behind it, and
Yeah.
for as far as just authors go, I've seen everything from people authors want to get their whole series made into an omnibus, and merchandise, whatever. And it's a great way to get the funds to do it. It's
Yeah.
crowdfunded.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's very, very smart on your part. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna be thinking about that for the future. Uh, this is a newer question I've been asking people, and it's so interesting to see people's, different point of view on this. What is one thing you want to see your future self accomplish at the end of your writing career?
I never want to see the end of my writing career.
Oh, I like that. I was thinking about
Um,
that this morning. I think that's a great answer.
I think I don't know. I think money and stuff like that are they're always going to be secondary to
Mm.
sharing my story to people. I think my ultimate goal is to write a character or a story that becomes a household name,
Amen.
um, that people build fan groups on social media about and people talk about.
Oh, that
And
would be cool.
I mean, people if people talk about your characters and your story and your world, knowing that they'll probably never get a chance to meet you, you've spread that far. To
Yeah,
me, that would be everything. So
that would be really cool. It's funny, like I said, like I've asked, I think you're like the 12th author I've asked this question to, and every single one of you had said something different and has given a really good answer. It makes me really think, in terms of I like goals and goal setting. I'm not like
yeah,
super crazy about it, but I feel like that would be really cool. I was
yeah,
thinking like, like Bob, like R.A. Salvatore, like totally, you know, I wanted to write him an angry letter after the Ghost King and Gone Hydrum. And I'm
yeah,
like, I literally cried. My wife like found me back to back, weeks crying at the two books. I'm just like sitting there, just pouring down tears. And she's like, you scared me. She's like, you're just not a crier. She's like, we watched a movie and done this. She goes, I've been to like 4 funerals with you. She's like, you're not a crier. I was like, I literally felt like my childhood was done, and she's like, you're almost 30. And I'm like, but I've been reading these characters for this long,
yeah,
I said it's like a best friend, I said they got me through depression, they got me through a lot of, anxiety, they got me through, just so many bad times. And now all of a sudden, like the whole world changed, I said my whole, I said it's weird that fictional characters could do that, but I said that just goes to show you that, Bob does such a good job. And and I mean, he asked a couple months ago, he's like, did which one of my books made you cry? So I was like, these two.
yeah,
And he was like, he goes, Dan, you answered really quickly. I was like, yeah. I was like, I still have a hang up on the first one with the Ghost King. But yeah, I just think, but I was thinking of that, earlier when I was asking this question to somebody, and we were talking about that. But I definitely feel like you're onto something. It would be really cool to, have people cosplay your character, or I think it'd be cool for you, like we they stopped doing it now because like they got sued. But we had like Potter Fest,
oh yeah,
I'm where Cornell University is in Ithaca, so they had a huge one. So it'd be cool. Maybe I'll have to tell them you could do like a Lucas Hale Fest.
there we go.
Be like, I know a guy, we'll fly him in, and sell all your merch and everything. But yeah, that would be, I don't know, that'd be really, really cool. I didn't think of that way. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll go right there with that last one there. So obviously, you're promoting Lucas Hale. Was there anything else, current news updates, anything else that you'd like to share with us in the meantime? How's the Kickstarter going, things like that?
Um, well, plans are right now to I'm writing the second book in Lucas Hale. I'm rewriting book three in the Lightning Rod Saga, and then if I ever get around to it, the story that I started writing from Nano last year, I wrote 62,000 words in it. It's still sitting there at 62,000 words. Um, but it's heavily influenced um, from Aragon. And Aragon's always been that's always been my favorite series, the Inheritance Cycle. And um, I wanted to take that and imagine, instead of a teenager getting a dragon egg and becoming a writer, what if a grizzled older veteran who's
Oh, that'd be cool.
he's already physically competent, very
Yeah.
competent in combat, to see what somebody that's spent 25 years in the military and all of a sudden now they got magic, that.
Mm,
And it's pretty interesting playing with his character because it really flips everything that he's ever known.
yeah.
Especially in he goes to meet the elves, and And this story, there's a lot of World of Warcraft inspiration from this too. There are elves and orcs, dwarves, then there are treants and druids. And when he goes to meet the elves for the first time and train with them, he realizes that physically he's not very imposing to anybody. I mean, any of the elves. And in the human world, in the life he's known, he's been top. He's been the best, the best. So it's pretty interesting playing with this character that way too. But I might get to finish writing that one. And then I've started writing a Western, a
I'm
dark
excited
fantasy,
about that. That sounds
uh,
awesome.
a Weird West. That's the term for it now, but that's about a monster hunter in the 1800s around the Wyoming area. That one's pretty fun to write. I get to finish writing that one too because I had 7 books planned for that one yet.
Mm.
So that's my 4 main things that I have to stick with because I continue to come up with ideas and they get in my head and I want to write them, but I got to stick with some other stuff. I don't have enough time.
Oh, I know
So
that feeling.
so if I can stick with those 4 series, I think those will take me for the next few decades. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. You write pretty fast. You might be done in like 4 years, you know?
yeah, we'll see.
I had somebody recently like, did you see what, CS is doing over there? I was like, yeah, I know. I was like, I was like, some people just write fast, And he's like, I'm
This
so slow. I'm like, I understand. I'm like, you
this
know,
this book here, I definitely wrote faster than anything else. I wrote it in was it a month, just under 2 months. I
yeah,
wrote it.
that's quick.
It was 99,000 words.
Dang, yeah, that's quick.
So I definitely flew through this one.
Yeah.
If I can keep that pace up for every book, that'd be nice.
Well, I remember you were like, "Oh, I had this great idea," and then I got busy, and then the next thing I knew, it was like 3 weeks,
Yeah.
like 45,000 words, and then I was like, "Oh, dang!" I was like, "Oh, he's doing well," and then the next thing I knew, you're like, "Yep, done." I'm like, "What?" I was
Yeah, I
like,
remember.
"That's crazy."
I posted on TikTok that I was looking for beta readers for it when I got done writing. And um, D'Artagnan Johnson, he said, "Didn't you just start writing that like 2 weeks ago?" So
That's what it felt like to me, though. I was like,
yeah,
"Dang, yeah,
it was
literally,
it was
yeah."
definitely fast.
The day where you said that, on I can't remember if it was on Facebook or TikTok or Twitter, but where you were like, "Yeah, I'm done." I was like, "Okay." I went home from work and I didn't really have much to do, and I was just like, "All right." And I think I had like a 6,000 word day because I was just
I'll
like,
tell you what though,
"Gotta get
but
going."
on your social medias and stuff, posting and like on Twitter, I changed my name on there. I put my word count in my name, and doing that and then posting every day on your social media so that when anybody's liking or anything like that, they're, the interaction that you're seeing is your workout from yesterday, and it motivates you to just write more. And even
Yeah.
if you write, 500 words a day, that it picks up pretty fast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did the math for that, and I was like, "Oh, really? You only have to do, that's what I'll do sometimes. Be like, oh, I only got to do, really this much to, you have to do X, Y, and Z." And I don't think a lot of people realize that, it doesn't really take that many words per day. You don't have to do 2,500 every day. It's nice,
Like
but
Nano is, if I remember right, Nano is 1,667 words per day,
yep, yep,
50,000 words, and I mean, this is 99,000 words, and it is 331 pages, and I mean that's two nanos,
yeah,
which this book and my other books, if I use the same font, that's what I found was interesting. If I use the same font, this book would have been about 40 pages more, even if it was size
interesting.
12. But that's another little nod. I don't know if you can see much, but I use the same font
Oh
that
yeah, you can definitely tell.
J.K. Rowling used,
Oh, that's
and
smart.
so, but it definitely shrank down the words.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you can set reminders for yourself to either one write or hey, this is only where you're at, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's
So
like I got Jet Hearn. I got the Excel spreadsheet last year from him, so that helped me out a lot to finish my first fantasy book. But then I got busier this year, so that ended up like kind of depressing me a bit
yeah,
and making me feel like I wasn't good enough. So I stopped doing that this year. And then now I'm about to be done with the second book, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, I don't know. My wife's like, what are you gonna do now? Like, you're gonna, do this? I was like, I don't know. I was like, maybe, sometimes it's motivating, sometimes it isn't. Like, I was like, usually now my friends, they text me like, hey, did you write today? Mark Timoney is a good one about that. He's like, how's the book going? I'm like, thanks for keeping me accountable.
yeah,
But yeah, I think you make a good point. Definitely got to find what works for you, and
yeah,
and I know people always say stick to that, but I'm kind of more of a mood person when it comes to tools and strategies. I have to be in the mood
yeah.
for it,
No, yeah. I know. Like it's. I know during Nano, that's the work kind of usually need to get.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but if I'm not in the mood to do it, then I'll just push myself the next time I am in the mood to you know make up for lost words, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I write with Google Docs, and that helps a ton because I can write on my phone and then it's saved and I can go home and write on the computer. So if you're writing, during lunch breaks or any
Yeah.
kind of breaks, I think I mean if you can on a lunch break, if you can knock out 250 words and
Yeah.
then 250 words on another break, and you go home and you write 500, you've done 1,000. So
Adds
it
up quick.
really adds up quick. So
Yeah, totally. All right, my friend. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Anytime, you got anything else to share, you just want to talk about something, you just let me know. You got all my social medias and everything. So just want to remind you, tag me, Facebook message me, send me whatever you got, and, we'll do our best to get it out there for you. We're going to start to do blogs per week as well. We'll do spotlights for those author profiles once we get them set up. So I'll definitely let you know ahead of time. We're going to get a really nice solid calendar for that. That way you can, you know, we're going to
yeah,
make a really big deal about it starting in
yeah,
the fall after Labor Day. So it'll be really cool. So hopefully, we can get, this book and some of the other ones out there, help you out as best we can. But like I said, if there's something else I can do, let me know. Obviously, we talk just about every day on social
yeah,
media in some sort of capacity. But
yeah,
it's been great to pick your writer brain, and I got a lot out of this. So I just want to remind our audience to check out CS's the socials are going to be in the description. If you do want to get a hold of an author, such as him, just get a hold of me. Some people are shy, so they, text me or whatever sometimes, like whatever you want to do. Authors love to to hear that you love their work. So
yeah,
he's gonna love hearing, you're gonna love hearing people talk about Lucas Hale. So
yeah.
I know I'm gonna be talking to you about it, so I'm really excited to do that. So if anybody out there does want pass the message along, somebody asked me that the other day. I said I have no problem doing that. But don't forget that you can also get a hold of the authors through those socials, and they love to talk to you guys. Please make sure any books that you are reading, you're reviewing, because again, you want somebody, to write a Lucas Hale #2. You gotta, help them out and get that business for them. So it's the easiest way to get more books is to review the ones that people have already published. So again, my friend, I hope that you have a great, great, great start with this series. I'm really excited for you. I think you got something really special here, and I see a lot of books, so I'm calling it now. It's going to be a good one. So I'm really excited to get my copy and to review it as quickly as possible. And if there's anything else I can do, just let me know.
Will do. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, my friend. We have a good rest of the evening, and I will talk to you later on social media or something like that.
All right, you too.
Later, bud.
Bye.